The next issue that I want to address that you may find yourself confronted with often when you're transitioning to Blender is where to get Blender support. Since there is no central dedicated hotline for Blender support, there's no one that you can just call up and get an answer immediately. Getting support for Blender can be challenging if you don't know where to go. And while this has definitely improved over the last few years, it's still got room to grow. But as long as you know where to go, then getting Blender support is actually very, very easy. One of the advantages to Blender is that it has a very, very strong, vibrant community behind it with a lot of very, very enthusiastic and very adamantly supportive people. And the best way to get support, number one, is if you have a problem that you're looking for, number one, check the manual. So if you go to the help, you can find the manual, and this is an online manual in wiki format that has most everything in Blender covered. Now, some things with the development speed of Blender, some things will be out of date for short periods of time, but it has definitely seen a lot of improvements in recent years and is generally a great first step to getting support and double checking your problems and whatnot. The next thing is the Blender community. So again, from the help menu, if you go to the help and choose user community, this will go directly to the user forums. Well, actually not to the user forums, but to all of the various community sites. And this is a bit overwhelming of sorts because, frankly, there's a lot of sites here. Some of them have not been updated in a while. This list of sites is probably not as up to date as it should be, and there's obviously a lot of them. So instead of going here, let me just tell you that the de facto Blender community is blenderartist.org. And this is the Blender Artist user community. It is the quote-unquote official forum for all community users. And you can find a wealth of support here, everything from Blender discussions to work-in-progress feedback, to new scripts that people are working on for add-ons, to then dedicated support and tutorials. And you'll find a huge number of users here. Other areas that you can go are the various sites that are run by third parties for tutorials. My own site that I run is blendercookie.com, which is run through, or is part of our company CG Cookie, which also runs several other 3D training sites. And we have a very large number of video tutorials available primarily for free, or we also have a dedicated paid membership that gives you further support. So that's one place. Another place is blenderguru.com, which is run by a young man named Andrew Price. Very, very excellent, and has a lot of focus more on special effects in Blender than on the various specific things. So he does a lot with fluid simulations, rendering realistic results in cycles, camera tracking, much more on the visual effects and the wow aspects. And then there's many other sites. These are probably the two main ones as far as the amount of content and the consistency of the updates. There's a few others that are here, there, and here, or that have been around for quite a while, but are not as consistently updated. And then the third place that I'd like to introduce you to is BlenderNation.com. BlenderNation.com is the de facto Blender news site, and browsing on here, you'll find anything related to the Blender community, Blender training, Blender resources, projects done in Blender. And so while this is not a support site by any means, and they will not take support questions, it can be a place to connect you with further things, such as, if a random user produces an excellent video tutorial, such as this cell fracturing tutorial, then those will oftentimes be posted on Blender Nation. So this is a great place to go to see updates about what's happening in the Blender world. So between Blender Nation, Blender Guru, and Blender Cookie, and Blender Artist, you should be pretty good to go as far as getting support. There are steps being made to get even further dedicated support for Blender, but for the time being, these are really the places to go. And oftentimes on Blender Artist in particular, if you post a support request, as long as you're being polite up front and actually describing what your problem is in detail and the steps that you have taken to solve that problem, then oftentimes you'll see a reply within minutes. It's very, very quick, very responsive, and for the vast majority of the time, very friendly.